All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of WCM's Outdoor Hospitality Update. I'm Ben Quiggle and my co host, Mike Gast.
Hi,
We
folks.
had, hopefully, everyone's doing good. I see Mike changed the background. No
Yeah,
RV this
I
time.
decided to go with a little bit of a fall color. I got one tree changing back there, and I got somebody doing a really slow canoe ride behind me.
Now, that's not fall in Hawaii, I don't think. You don't have
Oh
those kind of
no,
trees.
no! It's I try not to aggravate people. So this is a nice scene at actually a KOA up in New Hampshire.
All right. Yeah. Well, so far we're a couple guests light. Hopefully our guests are able to join us. We're supposed to have Kama Humphrey from Campgrounds of America and Kachina Starr. Hopefully I didn't murder, that last name, but from Beaver Lake Campground. She also owns two or three other parks. They're from South Dakota. And we were going to be talking about work campers. Kachina, I know, has utilized work campers for the last 15 years. And Kama works with the KOA work camper program that they have. So hopefully they can join us here down the road. Until then, I guess Mike and I will just talk for a little bit. I guess, Mike, what have you heard on the work camper front? I know on my end, especially last year, I was hearing from campground owners who noted that they were having a hard time even finding work campers because the jobs were plentiful, and places like Amazon and some larger companies were even using work campers. And it was kind of stealing away, I guess, from the campgrounds.
I think it was a real perfect storm for the campground owners for the last couple of years. They've
Yeah.
got you start talking about the pressures of minimum wage, which was a couple of years ago when that was
Hmm.
a major issue in a lot of states and federally. And then you've got just the mere fact of the demand that has happened in the last 18 months. When camping exploded in the later summer of 2020, the but if you've got a campground that's drops down to 15-20% occupancy on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, well, you can probably staff up on the weekends with some locals. You put your work campers to work a few more hours on the weekends. That's kind of the ebb and flow of it. But all of a sudden,
Yeah.
campgrounds were full every day. There was no day off anymore. And I talked to a lot of owners and during that time period where they weren't getting a personal day off. They were getting an hour here, an hour there. They may get an afternoon on a Monday if they were lucky. But typically, they were the ones that were filling the gap because they just couldn't find enough workers. And so when the
Yeah.
demand goes up like that, it gets to be very, very difficult. And of course, the cost of getting work campers went way up. The When all of a sudden, again, why would work camping be any different than any other employment right now? Because when the demand is so high, the power shifts to the employee.
Hmm.
And so when the demand is that high, I know in the case of KOA with their work at KOA program, they've got a lot of people, yeah, probably over 2,000 couples now that, and Cama can clear that up when she shows up, but they've got all these people with their resumes in, and they're getting bombarded with offers. I mean, they're in very high demand.
Yeah.
And what some of these systems attempt to do is lock these people into to the deal. If they agree to go to a campground, if say they're wintering in Florida and they decide that they want to go back to Michigan for the summer and work in a campground up there, and they get interviewed by the owner and they get hired by the owner. The owner's really expecting them to show up, but
Mm.
I know what's happened. Again, it's not KOA specific. I think it's in the entire industry. What was happening to a lot of owners was that the the work campers that had said that they were going to show up were getting short stopped along the way. They had camp because of course they're you know 2 or 3 nights away and they were staying at a campground, and they would get into a conversation with the owner at their first or second stop, and they would say, "Oh yeah, we're on our way to Michigan because we've got a work camper gig up there." And the guy would say, "Why don't you work for me?" And
Yep.
he would say, "What are they paying you?" And they'd say and what the deal was, and he'd make it a little sweeter, and they'd stop. and they would cancel out on the guy that was expecting them in 2 days in Michigan. So that kind of thing happened. I think there was a lot of that going on amongst the owners where they were just short stopping. If they had somebody that they knew was in the business of work camping, they wanted to grab them.
Oh,
And so I
definitely.
think I think that constant, again, why would work camping be any different than anything else? I think in the service industry in general, right now, there's a lot of that switching and moving. And if an employee feels like they have a better deal down the road or down the street, they'll take it because the power is really in the hands of the employee right now. And so some of these deals that you see coming out of campgrounds have had to be sweetened. And I know that the work camper field is a pretty complex thing because there's so many different rules as you travel around the country and even in both countries, Canada and the U.S., where there are the different provincial rules, different state laws dictating what people have to be paid, how much time off they have to have, what kind of benefits you can offer. Can you offer a free site, or does that have to be counted as compensation? Are they really employees, or are they quote unquote volunteers that are working for their site rent? Some
Yeah.
places allow that, some places don't. So it becomes a very complicated dance that owners are forced to do with the work campers.
Yeah, definitely. And I know exactly, I know we've spoken with owners on our end at Woodall's Campground Magazine, and just exactly what you echoed. Yeah, there were people who were, on the way to another work camper job, and they got, offered a better position, so they took it instead. I know I spoke with one owner who had that happen to her with the national park system. So they were staying at some national parks, and they saw this opportunity at one, and decided to take it, and the woman had to find something else. So unfortunately, right now, there's not a lot of other options. You lose the work camper, especially if you're really close to the beginning of your season, and it's difficult to replace that at the moment, unfortunately. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard down the road. Does the market kind of even out and go back to maybe the way it was, or is this going to continue? It's going to be interesting to see, I guess.
And there's many campground owners out there that do the carrot. They offer a signing bonus. For instance, if you
Yeah.
show up, you get X, and that's probably a new phenomena where the existing one, a lot of campground owners would offer a bonus if they stayed the entire year, because that's a benefit of having work campers over local, especially local high school and college kids, because if you've got a campground that goes until the end of October, it's pretty hard. You might have been able to get away with, in the old days when the midweeks weren't that busy, and maybe your fall season was really your Halloween and Harvest Festival weekends that you did. You might be able to get away with local help and who could come back to work on the weekends with the high school kids, for instance. But if when the midweek business has gone crazy, that doesn't work anymore, and now you're really reliant on those work campers to stay past when school starts.
Yeah.
And it's just become even more crucial that you lock them in to the end of your season if you're a northern campground, so that they don't go anywhere.
Yep.
And it's it's really become a high pressure job, and that I sure hope somebody joins us here so we can talk about what's really going on out there. But yeah, I think it's very stressful to operate a campground now. Again, there's no time off, there's no
Yeah.
lag. Uh, Even getting the sites mowed, getting the trash hauled, getting the bathrooms cleaned, getting the housekeeping done. Typically, a lot of campgrounds that rented out their cabins on a regular basis, they were full every weekend, but there was always a couple of days where those cabins would be dead in the water during the week. Oftentimes, that's not happening anymore. They're full all the time. So that means extra housekeeping staff. That means extra sweeps. That means if you've got dumpsters going on your campground, if that's how you're collecting the trash, those have to be dumped more because all of a sudden you've got a full campground 7 days a week instead of 4 days a week.
Yeah.
and
Yep.
it just impacts the entire operation. And again, makes the work camper that much more beneficial to have. Uh, Work campers for a long time, it's there's certainly wonderful work campers out there that are single and they're traveling alone. But I'd say the norm is usually couples that are traveling together, and one is put to work in the indoor setting on the office. One is the outdoor person. They're doing the landscaping, they're doing the lawn mowing, they're doing some maintenance work. They may have expertise, a former electrician, a former plumber, uh, small engines skills, and so they do that for their 20 hours, 25 hours a week that they may be working. Uh, and again, that brings up another whole issue of that dance that owners have to do because you can't work them full time unless they're full time employees. So you've got to really
Yeah.
watch how many hours in a lot of locations that you're working these folks. You can't all of a sudden decide that, oh, I'm going to put Mary on for two or three extra days this week and get her up to 45 hours or 50 hours. It doesn't work. So you've got to have the bodies there, or hey, Mr. Owner, it's you. And there's uh, there's a lot more big park operations, and when you think about what's going on in the construction of new campgrounds right now, nobody's building a 20 or 30 site park anymore. They're mega parks. These things are probably starting off with 150 sites, and they got plans to go to 500. Well,
Yeah.
that's a lot of staff and a lot of pressure. And so now all of a sudden, if you're a quote unquote mom and pop out there and you typically hire a couple of work campers or maybe four a year to help you with housekeeping, help you with the front desk, all of a sudden it's really hard to compete against the big corporate park down the road that has 40 or 50 work campers working for them. They've got a lot more options. People don't have to worry about getting called in extra time because typically people don't get into work camping because they want to work full time. If they wanted to work full time, there's more lucrative ways to do that than work camping. They're just trying to get a little fun spending money while they enjoy the lifestyle that they've adopted, and that's that travel, be where I want to go, work camping lifestyle. And it's so I see troubles ahead for the small campgrounds, just being able to lure and keep talented work campers because the big guys able to deal and give
Yeah. Oh,
and
okay.
we got somebody
Sorry.
coming in.
No. Sorry, you kind of broke up for me a little bit there. But I did want to point out, I think I don't know how many people in our audience know about Work Camper News, but they've been around for a long time and they have a ton of resources for campground owners who are, maybe exploring the idea of hiring a work camper, or maybe you already have work campers and you want to know how to manage them better. I could put some of the links to some of the stuff that we've done with them in the um, under in the search here, so that people can just kind of see some of the stuff that they offer. They offer some really good tips on, how to hire work campers, kind of the interview process, because it's going to be a little bit different than when you go hire somebody local like a high schooler. These people are, it's kind of a relationship you have to form. So, you want to kind of gauge the personality of the work camper, because obviously they're going to be at your park most of the summer. They're typically going to be living at your park. They're going to be interacting with your campers quite a bit, and you want to make sure that the work camper you're hiring is going to be the right fit for you. And so, Work Camper has a lot of tools as to how you can do that process, what it's like managing a work camper. And I think, Mike, you mentioned just the fact that depending on your location, there's a different rules on how you have to hire and pay work campers. So I know a lot of campground owners that I've spoken with kind of do trade outs with them. And there are some states where I think they're starting to crack down a little bit more on that. The trade out has to be valued at the hours they work. I know Levitt Recreation Insurance, which I'll put this in here. If you ever talk to Chris Hipple, he has, worked in this field for a while, and he has a whole thing about work campers. And I put the link in there where he talks about how park owners kind of need to be more aware of how they're paying work campers and trading things out so that they don't run afoul of laws that can cost them a lot of money down the road if they don't follow them correctly.
Yeah, and
So
I'd even suggest you put up KOA's site, work at
yeah,
KOA.com,
yep,
just so people can, independents can go in there and get a look at how KOA sets things up also. One of the benefits, and not to plug KOA here, but one of the benefits, one of the reasons they do work at KOA.com is to keep trained individuals within the system.
yeah,
So, and I think that's probably less of an issue now that I know that a lot of the Jellystone parks, for instance, are on Camp Spot, and so they're all on the same system. So once you have a trained individual that can sign on and just go to work, no matter what campground they're at, they become more valuable. And that's
hmm
always been a good hook for KOA because it was kind of a dream, I think, because the KOA system is a unified system back in Billings as far as reservations and how everything works. And so every campground's working off of the same system. So if you have a work camper that's worked at the Baton Rouge KOA and they want to go to Houston for the summer, they just pack up, move. The day they show up, they sign on to the system, and they're right back at it again. It's the same thing they just left. So I think that as campgrounds unify that Camp Spot, for instance, if you it's probably something that work campers are going to start factoring in more, so that if they know how it works, or that if they know how CampSpot works, they may be looking at other CampSpot campgrounds. That may be one of the questions they're asking a prospective campground employer. What
yeah.
system are you on? Oh, I know that one. And that just makes it a little bit more appealing to them because there's no training curve anymore. So it's appealing for both sides to have that. So that's one of those things that's going to start being listed on resumes, just like I know Excel, I know Word is
hmm
going to be, I know CampSpot, I know KOA's campsite system,
Yeah.
because it just makes them a much more valuable employee.
Oh yeah, I could definitely see that. And I'm going to put in another link to something that Chris Hipple wrote just about the employee, how to manage them to make sure you're not running afoul of the law. He mentions like contractors, how people, the how the industry is slowly changing what it means to be a contractor, and how it's not enough just to give them a site. It has to be valued at the work week, and parks are starting to run into some issues depending on the state they live in, where the labor people come in and say, hey, you're not paying them enough, or the trade's not worth it, or you're not reporting this correctly. So I think that's important for park owners to understand. um, it looks like Jesus Manuel Mena Garza. I'm planning to work camp in a few years and volunteer for state and federal jobs. So that's kind of neat. I know the state and federal systems have a lot of options available for work campers too, which is kind of making it even more competitive for private parks. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options for, well, hopefully a growing group of work campers. I think as we've seen this explosion in the last few months of new camping families, probably not an explosion in the folks that are work camping yet. I mean, I'm sure that there's more people that have decided to retire early in their 50s, but the majority of that explosion was probably in the 30 and 40, early 50 range of folks that are still actively campers. They just haven't thought about work camping yet. Probably like Jesus, that they're thinking about it and they're going to do it, but they really haven't jumped in yet. So I don't think the work camper pool, availability pool, has matched the expansion of the general camping public yet,
Yeah.
even though they're being relied on to service that crowd, because they're filling the campgrounds every night, and that does go for the state and national parks too. You think about what a typical state park looked like on a Wednesday. A
Yeah.
few years ago, it was dead in the water. It was where the folks could go to the grocery store, and whoever was managing that park, it was a different story. Well, at a lot of state and federal parks, what that person does is they may be checking people in, but they're just kind of there if anything happens. They're not really being asked of a lot. Probably their biggest duty was keeping the bathrooms clean and picking up the trash and making sure that that sort of physical thing was done. But when all of a sudden you're full 7 days a week, that changes that job quite a bit too, because now you've got to clean the bathrooms much more than once every couple of days. It's got to be a several times a day thing, just because of the load on that. And that goes for private and public parks. I mean,
Yeah.
the operational standards, I think, have changed significantly, and that changes the job.
Yeah. So it looks like Kama thought we were doing mountain time. Uh, I try to be specific with the Eastern time, but every once in a while it just falls through the cracks. It's okay. We deal with a lot of
Well,
time zone challenges. So
wait
I
till
told,
next week when you foolish people go on. You get rid of your daylight savings time, and that'll screw everybody up for a while too.
yeah, I like the extra hour of sleep though.
Yeah, so we don't
So I
bother.
get, yeah. So I guess when we look at the work camper news, it looks like there's tons of jobs out there, and it looks like, I think you mentioned, it looks like there's more jobs available than there are work campers too. So I wonder how much that's impacting that market at the moment. Are there more there's obviously more jobs available, I think, than probably work campers.
Oh,
Although,
absolutely. I
yeah,
think that kind of goes with, and just for that reason, I said I think the demand, the staffing demands have just probably doubled or quadrupled on some parks, even small parks. They can't get by with extra staff on Friday and Saturday, and then the owners take it over again on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That
yeah,
doesn't work anymore, uh, because that campground never shuts down. There's never a lull anymore, and that may go on for quite a while yet, as we see this influx of new campers settle into what their lifestyle is really going to be camping.
yeah, yeah. I think if you're looking at hiring work campers, it's definitely worth it to check out Work Camper News. Uh, Work Camper News, their website, and some of the links I sent you. They also do like a school there, and I think one of the things we need to touch on is just setting like those expectations of what the work camper is going to be doing before they get there. So you don't want to surprise a work camper. You want to build that relationship, and just kind of the interview process is so important when you're hiring a work camper, and helping them understand what's expected of them, and then making sure that you understand what they want out of it as well, I think is important.
I think what we're talking on right now, services like Zoom have changed the entire interview process for the better, because I know that owners are using features like this all the time. And it used to be very clumsy to try to face interview people. Back before FaceTime got smooth, back before we had things like Zoom, there was
Yeah,
no face to face. It might be a phone call if you were lucky. Oftentimes you were going onto a website and looking at their resume and hiring blind, really. You may be lucky enough to have a phone contact, or you just may hire them. You just may grab them. But I know
yeah,
with Zoom, then probably the clunkiest thing is when they used to do the virtual job fairs, and you were trying to match people, campground owners up with available staff, and there would be a line of five owners to talk to one person, just to and then the bidding war begins. What can I offer this guy to make it worth his while? And I think it's Zoom is going to change that. It's probably more of a one-on-one transaction. But I'm pretty sure that owners are really going to be frustrated probably for the next couple of years with folks that work campers that maybe not as honorable as others, and they may be playing that, well, sure, I'll take the job, and then they wait for the next best offer. And I think that's just going to happen. And what's happened with campers, as we all know, they're being told over and over and over again, well, you better book early if you want a site for next summer. You better do your reservations, a year in advance, because that's when the calendars open up. Well, there's Kama.
So am I late?
Of course you are.
Well, yeah, we were, Mike and I talk. We can talk, so you don't have to worry about us filling air. There's a lot of hot air.
Well,
right, because it said 2 p.m. Mountain Time, and it is 1:35 Mountain Time right now.
Yeah, we can blame Mike for that. I saw the email from Mike.
Well,
so.
But you know what? I think it's meant to happen, because this is what happened the last time, Ben. I tried to come on your show. We got the times all mixed up.
Yeah,
well, we've been talking a lot about work camping, Kama, and we've been talking at all these what we think is happening out there with work campers. We don't know for sure because neither one of us hires work campers. What's again, Ken, just full disclosure, Kama and I worked together a long time, at KOA, and I just retired last December. So I know the system as it was a year or two ago. But what's work camping? What's changed in the work camping setup in the last year or so, at least especially with KOA?
Yeah, obviously within the last couple of years with COVID, we saw kind of a pause to people, jumping into work camping, but that didn't last too long. That desire to really get out, and whether you're going out to camp or you're working in the outdoors, that desire is huge and it's there. So, our membership as far as the KOA Work Camper program goes, we really didn't suffer too much. We still got a lot of people coming into our program, a lot of work campers using our program. Our franchisees are obviously big advocates of the work camper program, but there's still a shortage in workers, and regardless of what industry you're in. I know our franchisees are struggling to get people hired. The bodies just aren't there.
How many folks do you have in the KOA Work Camper program now?
We have 2,100 work camping teams. So, and the team could be either a one-person team or a two-person team. The majority of our work campers, though, are two-person teams, typically a husband and wife.
So the growth we've seen in campers really hasn't equated to a growth in the massive growth in the number of work campers.
No, it hasn't. It has stayed pretty consistent with normal times. So we really need more work campers in the program to be able to fit the needs of our franchisees who are looking for those positions.
How many jobs are posted typically? Is that grown exponentially since all this happened?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows with the season. In fact, and I should have looked before I came on. I'm guessing we probably have, this time of year they're hiring for next year right now, because typically owners will hire 3 to 6 months in advance. Mm-hmm. So I would estimate there's probably about 300 jobs out there right now. A lot have probably been taken up, but it's pretty consistent. We do have last minute work camping needs, which is very important. Even if it's June and somebody's wanting to become a part of the work camper program and think, well, there's not going to be something out there for me. Our franchisees are always hiring. So we're getting calls often. So-and-so, left their position. I need a work camper right away. So we really try our best to communicate that with those that are involved with our program through we have a Facebook site and through our website and our email marketing.
So what do you do to limit the no-shows? That I know that's a frustration on owners.
It is. I think that's probably one of the biggest frustrations of owners. And, work campers plan so far in advance, and our owners have to plan so far in advance, and plans change. So somebody might get a job somewhere else and they think, okay, that one's more attractive position. I am not going to, fulfill my commitment to XYZ park. Or maybe there's some health issues or something that prevents them from keeping their position. But I think really the more that an owner can communicate, the better. So the minute that they hire that person, they need to make sure that they feel like they're part of their team, right? So that could be as simple as asking them to join your Facebook page so they can get a feel for the campground. Maybe your campground's undergoing a remodel or some fun events before they get there. Share that, email that information to the work camper that you just hired. Making them feel a part of the team is going to be they're going to feel more committed and more likely to show up.
Yeah, and I think we spoke a little bit about that earlier. Mike and I, we were talking. Well, I was talking just a little bit about that interview process and getting familiar with the work camper that's coming, what they want out of the job, and kind of full disclosure on what you're offering and kind of what you expect them to do at the park, so that there's not kind of a disconnect there, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there has to be very open and honest communication about what the position is. So if they're a jack of all trades, you need to let them know in that job description, and especially with the interview process of what their day-to-day is going to look like. So if they're cleaning a cabin at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then at noon they're going to clean bathrooms, right? I mean, it's what are all of the duties that are involved. So when they get there, they know what to expect. They're ready for it. There's no surprises. Absolutely detail every little thing that they would be doing on the campground. And we see that with some work campers, might share some concerns with us of, oh, well, I didn't know I was going to be doing this at the campground. So for an owner, I mean, the more descriptive you can make your job description, the better.
And then I think, Mike touched on a little bit earlier about like a resume, I guess. Are you seeing work campers that, denote, hey, I have experience with these reservation systems, or I have experience doing this at a park? I guess, are you seeing that more on the resumes of work campers?
We see a lot that are very KOA specific because they
Mm-hmm.
understand our reservation system, our K2 software.
Yeah.
We actually through our work camper program, we offer them online training. So they can, even if they haven't stepped foot on a KOA, they can be familiar from the get-go. And it really helps them kind of stand out from others that maybe didn't take the training. So that's one of the benefits for them being able to get hired that first time around, with KOA is, okay, I haven't worked on a KOA yet, but I've taken all of the training. I've watched all of the training videos on how to process a reservation, how to cancel it, and refund. I know everything that goes into it. I just haven't actually stepped foot on the campground yet, but I'm prepared.
Yeah.
So for work campers that adopt this lifestyle, and it's their way of life, and they're going from one work camping job to another work camping job, and they do it all the time. Mm-hmm. Does KOA still have a way to move them between jobs?
Yeah, we do, and it's a huge benefit of our program. We offer them travel vouchers, so they're $50 basically gift certificates that they can use at a campground. So at a KOA along their stay. So if they are say they live in Denver. And they're going to go work camp in Florida for the season, we're going to offer them some travel vouchers. It's all based on mileage. So that distance, it would be 3 vouchers. So it's $150 worth of free camping at a KOA to help them get from Denver to Florida. We want to make sure, it's. I don't think any other program, is out there like that. That they're able to offer the free camping. We recognize that some of them do travel, quite a difference. So anything that we can do to get them from point A to point B, and it also helps out our owners as well.
So I mentioned earlier that some of the independent owners I've talked to said that they were having problems with their work campers who had accepted the job getting short stopped along the way.
Yeah.
They were staying at a campground, and the owner just said, "Hey, why don't you stay and work for me?" And gave them either a sweeter deal or they just decided to stop. Does KOA have something in place that penalizes work campers for that behavior?
We don't. We don't have anything in place that would penalize them. I mean, it really is the hiring is by the independent KOA owner of either the campground that they were a no-show at, or the other franchise location. But again, it really goes back to making them feel part of the team right away, and hopefully, our franchisees will have each other's back where they wouldn't steal a work camper. But we recognize that plans do change, and maybe they find a fit somewhere. But by staying at KOAs along the way, it's a great opportunity for our owners though to go, hey, nice to meet you. Why don't you work at my KOA next season? So that's really what we hope they would do, would be next season they would come back. They'd have that opportunity to meet them and then hire them for the next season. When a work camper does finish a position at a KOA, that campground where they worked will assign them a campfire. And that campfire shows up on their resume through the workatkoa.com website. So other owners can see where they've worked, and it helps them. It's not a stamp of approval, more as a, hey, you this work camper worked at my campground. You should call me for a reference, and I'll give a reference.
Okay. Yeah. I guess how do the KOA, how do you work out the benefits part of this, as far as paying the work campers? Do you guys have certain standards on that you set for the franchisees on how that relationship with the work camper works, or is that up to the franchisees, I guess, to either trade stuff with them or pay them, or how's that work?
Yeah, it is completely up to the franchisee. We are not involved in their hiring decisions at all as a franchisor. So that's completely up to the franchisee. A lot of people do it different. Some people offer a free site for hours worked. We have owners that charge for the site. Sometimes it's cleaner on the books to do the charge for the site and then offer them an hourly rate. So really it's depending on what that franchisee would like to do.
Okay. Yeah, I know that was kind of things have been kind of changing as far as laws and different rules that
Yeah.
campground owners have to follow. So they kind of have to be careful and kind of really investigate how that relationship works, I guess.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. They need to be aware of what's in their the laws in their state.
yeah, I guess, we were talking at the very beginning of the show just about the tremendous, um, how tremendously difficult it's been for some park owners to get any help at all
Mm-hmm.
this year. And I guess, what do do you expect that to continue, I guess, or do you expect more work campers to come in now that there's been a flood of new RVers?
I can hope so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the camping industry is amazing right now, and more people are wanting to get out and camp. And as those people are getting out and camp, they'll also see that they can get out and work outdoors. So whether it's, a typical, retired couple who's going out work camping, or families, we are starting to see more families that are work camping together. So I think that's where we're going to see some growth, and with young adults. So for example, college students, they could, work if they don't want to head home or they want to get some other experience. Maybe they're in an outdoor hospitality program. They could go and they could work camp for the summer. So I see our growth in just a different demographic. I think we'll get younger folks into work camping, and definitely more families who've decided that they want to be able to work and travel, and possibly a homeschool.
Jesus Garcia asked, do many work campers do the financial math, taking into consideration the cost of the space versus the hours worked going towards that space? In a typical scenario, does a work camper typically end up working below minimum wage? And he's planning to work for a public managed park. I don't know if we can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, legally, yeah, well, I can answer it as, legally you have to, your hours worked and the site all have to balance out to minimum wage.
Yeah. And I think that, that's some of the issues that some campground owners were looking at. I know we had posted earlier in the show. There's a few links that we posted about Levitt Recreation Insurance had done a few things on work campers, and there was some work camper news.com stuff that talked about compensation. So it
Yeah.
probably just depends on the job and
Yeah, it really is.
location.
It'll be
Yeah.
different depending on where you're work camping at. Completely up to that owner if they want to charge for the site, excuse me, or if they want to offer a free site for hours worked. But whatever the legalities in their areas, the work they would have to follow.
Yeah.
So does KOA do active recruiting now? I don't. In my history, I don't think there was an awful lot done. There might be an ad or two placed or online that would recruit people into the KOA end of the lifestyle. But is there just some general things planned to try to lure people into the lifestyle of work camping?
We in the past we've done some travel shows and we've had booths where people can come and learn about work camping. We had done a booth at the Work Camper News show that they put on every year, but then of course COVID kind of changed a few things in that realm. So the majority of our recruitment right now is online recruitment. Advertising. We do a lot of Google advertising and Facebook ads.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I had any more questions necessarily, Mike. Did you have any more questions?
No, I think we covered the topic pretty well. And Cam, again, I'm sorry. I'm sure I screwed up the time zones because I'm sitting out here in the middle of the Pacific, about 5 time
Right.
zones, 6 time zones away from everybody. So
I just didn't want to do this to Ben again. Darn it.
No.
Well, we were gonna have an owner on, which unfortunately she couldn't make it. She's been having work campers come for 15 plus years, so it would have been great to hear from her
Yeah.
and her experiences. But for some reason, she didn't make it. Hopefully, it wasn't a time zone issue either. I try to put Eastern in every single one of my emails. So
Yeah. But what I would say about the work camping life that we see at KOA is our work campers they're so proud. They're very proud of being part of the Yellow family. We have franchisees that have used work campers for years and years, and has just really have built a lot of relationships, and it's really fun to see.
Yeah, I think that's, even outside of the KOA system, I think, when we talk to park owners, there's just a lot of pride with work campers. And I think, there's a lot of parks where they can get a work camping couple and that couple will just keep coming back because they just love coming to the park every year. So, I mean, if you can find a couple like that, then you've got some help for years down the road. And there's a lot of great rewarding stories of working with work campers, and you do have the negative stories, but there seems to be a lot more positive than negative. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So just as a parting shot, Cam, what one piece of advice would you give to any campground owner, KOA or not, as far as work campers? Is it scheduling sooner? Is it interview skills? Is it make sure that you do a face-to-face like we're doing today? What one piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, I would think it's start that relationship early, build that relationship to make sure that they feel part of the campground and they're going to show up. So the minute you hire, regardless if you're hiring 2 weeks out or 6 months out, just making sure that they understand. You're very clear in your job description, and you've already started building that relationship. They know what to expect when they get there, and they've got a really, really clear picture of the owner's expectations too.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kama, for coming on, and thanks everyone for joining us. Next week we'll be at the National Association of RV Parks and Campgrounds Outdoor Hospitality Conference and Expo, and I actually made it all the way through that title without messing up, so that's great. But that's in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're going to have hopefully Paul Bambi on. I know David Bassler is going to join us, and we're just going to talk about RVIC and the convention and just about the campground industry in general. So it should be a really great show. And then, of course, the following week we'll be at the KOA conference, and I believe Toby is planning to join us just for an interview about how KOA has been doing this last year and their conference. So that should be
Kama,
great.
you've got a little bit to do with the conference too, don't you?
Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and hope everyone has a good rest of the week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.